Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Sarah, and this is Sarah Sessions. It's been a while, and I am happy to announce that Sarah Sessions is back up, and my first guest today is Lorena Garcia Giron, Creative Director of Co-Crea, host of Ladies One in Design, and has worked on many different design exhibitions as well as panels, and has worked as a facilitator as well as a host for many different workshops, as well as giving many conferences throughout the design world. She has lived 15 cities and 5 countries and is at a young, ripe age for creating more inspiration in a world that needs more beauty. So, hello, Lorena. Nice meeting you again.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Fantastic. So, tell me a little bit about you so that people can get a feel for who you are. What is a creative director?
That's an interesting question, actually. Before labeling myself as a creative director, the question about who am I? Because I think throughout my professional life as a designer, I have focused on creating identities. So branding is mostly my field, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I think that it was shaped throughout my life because of the experience of living in so many different countries and cities and cultures, and having to deal with that question, where are you from, or who are you? And I think that it's not just my experience. I think that it applies to anyone. And in the corporate world, it translates to branding, logos, the tone of voice, the look and feel, and all of that marries the creativity with design. And it's what I do on a regular basis.
So let me ask you the big question. What got you into all of this in the first place? When did you find out that design was something you wanted to work with?
It goes back to my parents, actually. So my mom is an industrial designer. She has a bachelor in fine arts and industrial design. And my dad is a scientist. He has a PhD in physics and is a radio astronomer. So I really like Venn diagrams. And when you combine art with science, what you get in the middle, and this is my personal perspective, is you get design because it's form and function, right? So ironically, or maybe just logically, my brother and I fell into that. He's an industrial designer and I'm a graphic designer. So ever since I was very little, I was exposed to this creativity in both fields, and I knew from a very early age that when I felt the most alive was when I connected with my creativity. It's just, I sort of forgot about it through the journey of life, and I had to reconnect with it later on, which is, I guess, what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. So right before starting this podcast, to get prepared for some inspiring expression, we did a little bit of breath work, some lymphatic resets. If you're interested, Stop Chasing Pain online actually has it, and I will be posting it soon. And now we've got all this energy. Now, how do you keep your energy going after all these years in design? Before we go back to the beginning, I want to know where you are now in creating that energy for you in your design journey.
I think that there's this big satisfaction in finding the right solution to what seems to be a problem, or like we like saying nowadays, a challenge. I get this big rush from finding that and putting it to practice and making things better. I think I'm sort of addicted to that. And that can be translated in many different ways. I mean, like just yesterday, I was retouching slightly so that it's not very obvious a portrait for a book that I'm working on for a client. And I saw the original photo that the author of the article had sent. And then I saw the portrait that I had taken of him. And then I saw the final version. And it was so satisfying to see how I was able to help this person look their best so that what they were expressing in the book could be perceived even better. So that is really a rush of energy and of satisfaction. And that's a very, simple example. It's also the way I keep my energy and my motivation going is connecting with other people, other creative people. So I became the host of Ladies, Wine and Design in 2021. And Ladies, Wine and Design is this initiative that is worldwide. It started in New York with Jessica Walsh to get women and non-binary individuals together to talk about the challenges and the realities of designers and creatives in our field so that we don't feel alone. And throughout, I think I was telling you right before we started this podcast that next year it's going to be 20 years since I graduated. So that's huge,
That is huge.
When you say 20 years ago, then it is actually 20 years ago. What I've learned throughout my professional trajectory is that the network that you create is very important. So often when you're working in a team, you might be the only designer, or if you are freelance, you might find yourself working by yourself. Through this initiative, you get a chance to meet up and talk to other people that are in the same circumstances or similar circumstances. And you can talk about very deep subjects or very shallow ones and just know that you're not alone. So if you have a question, there will be someone to answer that, or you can even share what you've learned. And so it's, a very...
Reciprocity.
Yeah, reciprocity.
Becomes so important in those situations.
Sorority as well, amongst female and non-binary creatives, which is something that we need to move forward.
Mm-hmm. So that's Ladies, Wine and Design, but community. I mean, you are connected to so many different communities, and you have been part of quite a few conferences as well as facilitated many workshops. Tell me more about that.
How did that happen?
Yeah. How does somebody create that?
Well,
and how did you get into it? And
yeah. If I think back to it, it all started in 2017. It was after I had been laid off. And I was feeling really low, as was expected. But this time I decided, to take a little bit more time to get back up. And during that time, I started going to events because, we live in Montreal, and Montreal is this amazing city. I'm in love with Montreal. I really, really love the city because of its multicultural and aspect and the diversity in it. So there's so much that the city offers. But sometimes, and very often when you are an immigrant, you're not aware of all of these events that are free. So what happened is I started going to des midi conférences or des matinées numériques or things like that were free and of subjects that were interesting to me. And I wouldn't just attend and listen. I would listen and I would always prepare a question. Mm-hmm. So I guess I've always been a nerd. I always was very, very good in school. So I would take notes, and in the questions Q&A, I would always raise my hand. Sometimes it was intimidating, but I would still do it. And it was a way to connect with the speakers and also with the audience. So through attending these different events, the ecosystem, the creative and entrepreneurial ecosystem in Montreal is not that big. So you end up seeing people that you recognize. And what I found is that by attending the same events, then you grow accustomed to seeing these people, and then you will say hi to them, and you will eventually talk to them and no longer feel like an outsider. And also, I got involved in Creative Mornings.
What is that?
Creative Mornings is a series of breakfast lecture events where everybody's welcome. It's in, I think, like around 250 cities in the world. It also started in New York. So I reached out to Creative Mornings. They were looking for an art director, and I joined the team in March or April 2017. And I worked my way up in the organization and the team throughout 5 years of being there. So I ended up being head of content and speaker recruiter and storytelling coach. So it was this wonderful, really wonderful sandbox where it was a safe space to try something you had not necessarily studied in, but you were curious about. Because it was volunteer work, then pressure was off because everybody was there to create something that was worth inspiring other people. So that's how I got into experience design and events and coaching speakers.
And what a wonderful opportunity to actually fall into sharpening your skills, the skills of courage, the skills of communication, expression, and, working through play because there is no expectation, because it is a volunteer position. So that gives you a lot of experience in refining your tools in your toolbox.
Creative Mornings has a theme every month. That is the same theme worldwide, but every city or chapter, as they like to call it, has carte blanche to interpret and develop that theme into a conference. So it's what I would do is I would interpret the theme for our city, and I would look for a speaker that would match with the theme, and then help them create a tailor-made 20-minute talk for the event. So this really allowed me to meet and have a privileged connection with over 40 people that were amazing in the Montreal scene. And it allowed me to refine my skills and also discover this passion that I have for storytelling and for helping others express themselves better.
How beautiful. And that's where design comes, as you want to express so much in that one design that you work on to reflect, for example, that book cover that you're doing, to reflect that person, to reflect what it is that you want to share with one glance.
Yes, so it's quite a challenge because there's so much to say, and usually refining that and summarizing it and simplifying it is harder, but the more simple and even the more obvious the solution, the harder it is to find it. And the harder it is to implement it as well. It is way simpler to do something complex and vast and confusing instead of clear and concise.
So I'd like to take a moment and rewind the story a little bit. So now you have all this success, you have all these connections, this wonderful community. You're all around Montreal. You've met all these wonderful people. You have the networking going. You've put of your heart and soul in every group that you've entered. But what is it that started it all? Once you finished your university in Mexico, what made you want to move here? What happened?
I think I was used to moving a lot. So it was part inertia, and I had, gotten used to being a nomad. And also, both my parents lived abroad for a while before having me and my brother. So I had the example. And also, I was hungry. I was hungry for more, for diversity. And I wanted to see what life could become for me. So I set out in this journey of what I thought was the right path for me. Not in the empowerment kind of way, I can do it all, but more in the, I have an incling that there's more out there. If I can just get myself to do it, and as the book says, feel the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Because people used to tell me, oh, you're so brave for moving to another country by yourself. And I didn't feel brave. I seemed brave. I felt scared. But I could also trust that it was for the better. So that's what you were asking about, why Montreal, is because I had lived in Europe when I was little, in France and in Germany. And I was craving a city where I could speak several languages. And Montreal, even though it can create tension between, francophones and anglophones, from me as an outsider, it was what attracted me to the city. I wanted a place where several languages could coexist, because I believe that we express different sides of ourselves depending on the language that we're speaking, and it also allows for a different perception of the world because of the vocabulary inherent to each language. So it's not the same thing to say the same phrase in one language or another, So that's something that attracted me to this city.
Mm-hmm. So how did you know that you were going to take your passion and bring it here and make it work?
I didn't.
Fantastic.
I just, I took the leap. And I just wanted to mention, Sarah, that we have a tendency to say that people are successful and talk about the peaks, mm-hmm. right? But the journey is not just peaks, it's peaks and valleys. And it's also not a straight line. And there were many detours, and there were many valleys, and there were many circumstances where I felt that I had maybe not made the right choice, and I doubted myself. And then life helped me see that I was still on the right path. But I wanted to say that because if anyone here listening thinks like, oh, she had it easy, or she set out to do something and it just happened, that's not true. Mm-hmm. It's hard work. It's a lot of resilience. Is the willingness to go through the hardship because you deeply believe that you're meant to do something that will have a positive impact. Mm-hmm. So that's what has kept me going.
Beautiful. Is that your why? To have a positive impact?
Yes, of course. That's why our slogan is Design with Purpose, mm-hmm. right? So it's, I think, this is going to sound kind of like philosophical, but I think that all of us are here to create positive impact. I mean, who wants to create negative impact? And to leave a legacy, to create something that's bigger than you. And this might sound like very ambitious, but you can take it down to its smallest expression. When you are kind to someone, you have a positive impact on that person, on that day, on that very moment. So it's very attainable. And I do believe that each of us has talent and that all of us have the potential to be very creative.
Absolutely.
We just need to be able to tap into that.
The ripple effects of positive change can take us much further than what we would assume or expect. And I think creating that space of positive change with design in mind is, I think, what people need this day and age, because everything has become either fake through artificial intelligence, robotic, or copied. Everybody looks the same. So to bring a creative function and form to life in bringing positive change seems to be what you've been doing. Can you come back and tell me how you took that? Did you know that when you actually moved to Montreal? Did you know that that was your purpose? How did you come to that purpose? Because there's like a whole valley somewhere in there that we're not hearing and that people are not seeing, as you said. So do you want to share with us what it brought you to go through those valleys of downtimes and of struggles and confrontations, discomfort? What does it take for you to go through that?
Well, I'm going to reference the design process because in the design process, you research, you analyze, you brainstorm, you develop a concept, you iterate, you apply it, you test it, and you iterate. So iteration is you try something, you see what worked, you keep that, you see what didn't work, and you flush that, and then you build upon what did work until there's something that doesn't work. And then, it's like a spiral. So you're not going in circles, you're still advancing, but you're going over the sort of
fine-tuning.
The fine-tuning, yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I tried within the creative and design field different areas. So I worked in advertising, I worked in web design, I worked in museum and exhibition design. I even worked for a newspaper, mm-hmm. And I worked also for Transat, in their in-house studio. So it was all very different areas that allowed me to explore my skills, to discover them, to develop them, to fine-tune them. And then from that pool of different experiences combined with my volunteering work and my, sandbox where I could try other things, I was able to pinpoint what I'm good at and what I want to dedicate time to.
Very intentional focus.
Yes.
That you practiced.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So for me, it's not something that you asked me, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. For me, success is not being, famous or recognized or earning a shit ton of money, that can be nice and welcome. But for me, success is being able to do what you choose to do when you choose to do it, fully present and from an intentional
place.
Yeah. You know, if you have that, for me, you're a very successful person.
How does that success connect to your creativity? Or is your creativity connecting you to your success?
I think so. I mean, I am creative in different areas of my life. So even if I'm cooking dinner, you know, I will make a happening and have fun with the ingredients that are left in my fridge. And that keeps the creative juices going. I will also...
You have an Instagram page for that, right?
Yeah.
So I'll actually put the link on the show notes so that you can have access to her personal account as well as her business account as well as her happenings, musings of wonderful leftovers in the fridge.
Yeah. But it's called happenings_MXMTL for Mexico and Montreal. And that's like my culinary creative outlet. Also, something that I wanted to mention is that there have been times where I have purposely taken myself out of my creative comfort zone and I have explored other areas so as to challenge myself. For example, I took an improv course back in 2017 and I did it because I had never done it before. And a friend of mine was the teacher, and it was in English, which is my second language. And I learned a lot from that improv course. Life lessons, right? The yes and, the not having a response prepared in advance, because that means you're not actively listening. To trust yourself, to trust that you have what it takes to respond to whatever is thrown your way. And I was very naive. I thought that people were going to this course because of the same reasons, but then I realized they were all actors. And they were trying to get better at acting, and I had never acted before. So those kinds of things. Like lately, what I did was I signed up for an apnea course. So holding your breath, right? I remember my yoga teacher used to say that graphic designers would just breathe in very deeply and then hold their breath until their deadline was met. And I would just laugh because that was me. So it was like exhale, inhale, not just inhale, you know, remember to exhale. And I went and I took this course and it made me discover a whole other side of me where I can have awareness of my body and reach a state of calm that I had not been able to reach elsewhere. Not with yoga, not with meditation, not with therapy, not with swimming. You know, it was really by holding my breath underwater for a long time. And the principle of doing as little effort as possible to get as much distance or time. It was counterintuitive to what I had learned as an athlete, you know, growing up. And then, you know, the bigger, better, faster, more, which translates to our everyday life. So when you're holding your breath underwater and you want to do 50 meters, you know, the last 5 or 4 meters are going to seem very hard. So the last stretch. But if you look up, then you will lose your calm. If you accelerate, then you will not make it because you will consume more oxygen. So what you need to do is actually keep the same rhythm or even slow down. And for me, that was like this
eureka moment of life, right?
Yeah. And it was like, okay, so as a designer, when I have this deadline and I think that I won't be able to make it and I need to double the speed and, you know, not eat, not sleep, just go through it, it's actually the opposite. You know, what if I kept the same rhythm or I slowed down so that I am able to make it in a better state. So I go back and forth from these different activities that have nothing to do in, apparently with design. But I believe that everything is connected.
Well, I strongly believe that breath is connected to imagination and well-being, and how that can impact our imagination, our inspiration, our expression, and how we show up in the world. So when we have a full breath and we're able to keep our calm and our connectedness to ourselves, our connectedness to Mother Earth, to our bodies, right? To that nature that's within us, a different part of us shows up. And I think that is a beautiful rendition to how everything is interconnected and no system works alone. So it can't always be about design. It can't always be about creation. It has to be about integration. It has to be about calm and silence and bringing balance between the movement and the stillness. And I think that that's why you're taking these wonderful different classes that complement your experience in design. So fantastic. That must be so much fun too, right?
It is. It is fun to try new things. And it can be frustrating at times, and that's something that we all need to be aware of. We hear very often, get out of your comfort zone, try something new, be brave. And that's great. But you also need to know that it will be uncomfortable. But through discomfort, you are able to learn a lot about yourself.
Absolutely. That's where we learn our boundaries and our limits and what we like, what we don't like, how we need to step up our conversation or our expression so that we can live a better life and a more fulfilled. How do you deal with that discomfort?
I think it has to do with trust. I have learned to trust myself, my mind, my body, my skills to be able to deal with discomfort. Also knowing that it is temporary and that it is a stepping stone to something that interests me or that is necessary or that I am meant to achieve. So with that mindset, I am able to go through discomfort. Otherwise, if discomfort is just there without this framing, then I don't think anyone would be able to go through it. If you think that it is there forever and that it is that it's not a stepping stone, but that it's the end result, then who would, it's necessary to see beyond it.
Absolutely, because it's through that discomfort, that confrontation, that you actually build yourself. That's what builds character, right? How you step up, how you deliver, how you go through something instead of dodging it and trying to ignore it or put it aside or procrastinate on it. Or
there's a very good book that I read. I think 2017 was a very important year in my life because that was a pivot in my journey, I think. From there, things started changing a lot in my life, and they have changed since then. One of the books that I read that year was called The Beauty of Discomfort, and the author is Amanda Lang. She's a Canadian journalist, and she talks about how discomfort is something that is inevitable and that is necessary for growth, for creativity, and ultimately for happiness. And it addresses it in different areas, parenting, entrepreneurship, athletes, different. It's a very good book. I would recommend it to anyone.
Great.
And I also read that year The Gifts of Imperfection. So before Brene Brown was this huge phenomena. It's a tiny book that chose me in the bookstore. I remember reading it and it speaking to me so loudly that it really set the course, to a different path from the trajectory that I was in. I had been in Montreal for 12 years. No, it was 17. Yeah, so for 11 years. And I had tried a certain path according to a blueprint that we get from society.
And so that's when you were working with these different companies as well as Transat and
La
for
Presse
branding,
and,
La Presse, web design. And so what happened with that? You just let go of all of your jobs, like 9-to-5 jobs? Or what was the trigger for that shift?
I realized that I was not afraid to work really hard, that I had done it many times, but I wanted to be able to choose the projects and the clients and the work culture and the environment in which I was participating in a daily way. So that's why I dared, to go off path.
So what does that mean, off path? Because I think your best friends talk to you about how you got to go into fear, and you were talking about discomfort and confrontation, and you're talking about off path, and you're this very successful creative designer. What does that mean, off path, for you? How does that connect to free radicals?
Oh, yeah. So there are different routes when you are a designer. And again, this is from my perspective. There might be people that see things differently. But one of the ways to be a designer is you go to a school that has a good reputation here in Montreal, and they will plug you into one of the big studios or agencies, and you hop from one agency to another one, building up on your portfolio and your title. And it's a 9-to-5 job, even though in the domain it's never over at 5. Yeah, that's one of the ways of doing it. Another way is setting out on your own.
So entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is really scary because you have to find your own clients and you have to charge for the worth of your work. And that's a big issue and quite a taboo in our domain, in my domain and the design domain. It's something that we talk about in Ladies, Wine and Design. And then you need a network because unlike other professions or companies, you can't just cold call to get clients as a design studio. You need to showcase what you've done. You need to build trust for people to want to work with you. And that takes time. So it's the chicken and the egg, right? Mm-hmm. So for many immigrants, and this is going back, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with design, but you get here and you want to get your first job, but they ask you for a Canadian experience. But you can't get a Canadian experience without your first job, right? So in that aspect, I would tell people, volunteer. Find an organization that you are interested in and volunteer your time. And then put that in your CV, and that will open up doors. As a designer, you can find also smaller projects, and those will build up to bigger ones.
It sounds like there's, that's a really big roadblock it feels like, right? Change of language and change of scenery with a whole group of people that you don't know in a niche that is very, very important to have a good network, right? And
Yes.
so what are some of the roadblocks and how you've come through from moving to Mexico to here to working in these companies to then switching to becoming the owner of your own company, Co-Crea, which has worked for many years now, 6 years now, I believe.
Yes.
How does that entrepreneurship and that design and that confrontation, can you just give me a little bit more about that, how you've dealt with that? What is the one thing that you come back to, in other words?
Resilience.
Is resilience something we know, or?
Resilience is something you develop because you do not have the choice. If you're not resilient, then you stop existing, right? Like you get knocked off and you need to get back up again. And that getting back up is what we know as resilience. So there's this saying that everything happens for a reason. What I think is that when it's happening, you have no clue and it's kind of hard. But in hindsight, all of those dots connect to where I am today. So when I moved to Montreal in 2006, I had this vision of what I wanted my life to be that has evolved through time, and that is no longer like I wouldn't want today what I wanted back then. And I think that that is very valuable. I remember that I would start my day by walking very early in the morning in the park. It used to be Mont Royal, the mountain. I would go to the lake in Mont Royal because I live downtown. And I would go there to remind myself why I had chosen to come here. And then I moved to Villery and I would go to Parc Jarry and I would look at the condos that were on the south side. And I would tell myself one day I will live there. You know, I will have this beautiful home there and picture everything. And what's ironic is that now I live on the other side of the park and I love where I live and I wouldn't want one of those condos, you know, and so that's what I find fascinating, that maybe that projection of what I wanted was necessary for me to get to where I am today, even though where I am today is far from what I had projected in the beginning. But I find that it is richer and it is more authentic also.
What shifted? What gave you that resilience to keep on going, and what shifted in your approach to life?
Being true to myself. I'm asking it instead of saying it, right? That's so feminine of me. Being true to myself.
Yes.
And setting boundaries and saying no. Because when you say no to something, you create a space for something else to exist. Also, I really like the book from Glennon Doyle called Untamed, where, you know, the whole premise is what we need to unlearn. So I think I had to unlearn many, many things. It took me 12 years to unlearn the blueprint from society in order to dare go off path. And it has taken me 6 years of learning a lot and unlearning a lot as well in my company to be brave enough to listen.
To listen.
Yes.
Yes, to listen. Because that's one thing that we don't very often do in today's day and age. Everybody's running around, everybody's doing everything, and there's not enough time in a day. I'm one of them. I completely, totally with you on that. But to stop and listen. And why is that so important for you?
I'm going to compare this to when you're listening to the radio, right? So when you stop, it's as if you stopped in a specific frequency. So let's say 92.5, right? And then you can get the clear waves that will transmit the information. But if you are constantly moving, then you can get static, and that static does not allow for the clarity that you need in order to process, to receive and process that information. So, like even with brainstorming, for example, in our projects, in the brainstorming stage of our projects, my brother and I, we would go elsewhere. We would go elsewhere to change scenery, to stop our routine, to change the pace, and to allow for our creativity to flow in a way that it would not be able if we weren't there.
I guess that's one of the reasons why we love traveling, right? Because when we travel, we're confronted by so many different experiences, situations, people, language, that it naturally broadens our mind to think and see things differently and accept things differently. So I guess that's where the juices start flowing for you guys.
Yeah, I remember when I finished university, I went on the very classic backpacking trip, solo trip. I went for 10 weeks to Europe. And I was in Prague, where I was complètement dépaysée. Because it was either Czech or Russian or German or English, in that order. And I remember writing back to an uncle of mine saying, I have become an expert in getting lost. And I think that now I get lost on purpose, because getting lost allows me to find my way back. And in finding my way back, I develop the skills and the trust in my capacity to find solutions.
Yes.
So I think if we take that and bring it to everyday life, if you are too busy with your routine and the same path going over and over and over again, then you are depriving yourself of that ability to wonder and listen and discover things that are there, but that just don't have the space or the wavelength to reach you.
Or your attention or your presence, because there is so much noise around us, right? And what would you describe that noise to be? So personally, I would describe that noise as toxic relationships, or maybe sometimes social media or news, which is unfortunate lately, because it seems like the world is falling on its head and Mother Nature is a little mad at all of us. But how,
Well, it's all of what you just mentioned. And
noise.
Yeah, that noise. What I have learned to do throughout the years, because in this journey of self-discovery, there's the term hypersensitive that can have a bad connotation. But if you look into it and you know that you are hypersensitive, then it can be like a superpower, which is what I chose to see. And taking that into consideration, I filter. There's always going to be noise, always. And again, we go back to discomfort, right? So what can you do? You can filter in different ways. One of the things is, reducing your time in social media, or the exposure to bad news. I think it's important to be informed, but that doesn't mean that it has to overflow into your daily life. I have filtered the people that I connect with, and that has made a very, very big difference. I believe that life is short. We don't have that much time every day. and who we choose to spend it with and what we choose to spend it on is key to our well-being.
Absolutely. I find that so beautiful and so true. I also like to see the world and life as I only have maybe 40 more summers. That's not a lot, man. I gotta get moving, right? So yeah, your noise canceling routines, what would that be? Or what is it that counters all of this noise for you to bring you back to center as a woman, as a mother, as a sister, as an entrepreneur, as a host and a facilitator and an art director? What is it that you do to help you come back to center and to ground and to keep going and keep that grit in bringing your passion all around and sharing your inspiration?
I heard Esther Perel say something about freedom, before having kids, having no structure gives you freedom. After having kids, having a structure is what allows you this freedom. So structure is a good thing. And even having a routine is a good thing, can be a good thing. So it's incorporating things that have to do with well-being within your everyday or your weekly routine that have made the most impact in my life. So it's waking up, and the first thing I do is listen to a guided meditation. After dropping off my kid and before starting my workday, I read or take a walk and listen to a podcast that is inspiring or interesting. So I feed my spirit before being able to give to my job or to others. I exercise, regularly. And also I connect with friends and family on a regular basis.
Can you give us, so you just gave us a little bit of what you do to cancel out the noise. We've talked about your design. We've talked about entrepreneurship and moving and the courage that it takes to build that resilience by going through the confrontations that we live. And we've talked about what inspires you. Now, what is it that you'd like to bring to the world, to share? What is it that you want to infuse the world with your magic?
I would really like to help people and organizations to be more authentic and brave in the expression of what they have to say and help their message get through. That's what I would like. Whether it be through branding or through a workshop to find solutions or an experience for the users or whatever form it takes. But it's digging deep, finding the essence and bringing it up to the surface and transforming it in a way that it can be easily understood and integrated.
If you'd have 3 things that you'd like to share with the listeners out there to work with heart and passion, what would that be?
I would say listen to yourself. You would be surprised of everything that's in there if you just let it come out. Pace yourself. Pace is very important.
So important.
And trust. Trust yourself. I think that there's a lack of self-trust. And if we can overcome that, then empowerment follows. And when you are convinced that you have the power to do what you are set out to do, even if what you're setting out to do is hard, the journey there, the process will be much easier.
Mm-hmm. And I think those people that are supposed to be on your path show up once you take the first step, and then the next, and then the next, and everything falls into its own space in time, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Are there any information or details that we can find for getting in touch with you? What is your favorite way of being contacted?
I'm not a big social media person. I can do that for my clients, but not very much for myself. So LinkedIn for professional, contact, and Instagram, it's Lorena_Cocrea. That's where I am mostly. So yeah, you can reach out and I'll be happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
And for those of you that are listening, please forgive my beginnings. I am getting back into it slowly and surely, and this will get better and better, hopefully, with time. I appreciate you taking the time to listen in. I wish you a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Until next time.